the world of hip-hop just stopped breathing. We've seen the arguments, we've heard the threats, but nobody, and I mean nobody, was prepared for what just leaked from a private North Atlanta studio. This isn't a reality show clip, and it isn't a scripted stunt. This is the bone-chilling moment King Harris accidentally hit go live during a brutal physical confrontation with his father, T.I. You're about to see the raw footage that the Harris family tried to bury, the lunges, the screams, and the shocking betrayal that has officially ended the King of the South's legacy. If you think you know the truth, you're dead wrong. Stay right there, because what happened after the phone hit the floor will haunt you forever. To understand the blood-chilling chaos that unfolded in that North Atlanta studio, you have to realize that the Harris family hasn't been a family for a long time. They've been a battlefield. For over 2 decades, Clifford Joseph Harris Jr., the legendary T.I., has sat on a throne he built out of the red clay of Georgia. He survived federal prison, he survived the streets, and he survived the most cutthroat era of hip-hop to become the King of the South. But while he was busy conquering the world, a monster was growing inside his own palace. The rift between T.I. and his son, King Harris, isn't just a father-son disagreement. It is a clash of 2 different worlds that were never meant to coexist. On one side, you have Tip, a man who prides himself on logic, respect, and a calculated public image. On the other, you have King, a 21-year-old rebel who breathes fire, lives for viral moments, and refuses to live in anyone's shadow, even if that shadow belongs to a multi-platinum icon. The world saw the first signs of this inevitable explosion years ago. Remember the infamous Waffle House incident? When King was caught on camera screaming at employees over a messed-up order, the internet laughed. But insiders tell us that behind closed doors, T.I. was livid. He saw his legacy being dragged through the grease of a late-night diner. He tried to discipline him, tried to mold him into a prince, but King didn't want a crown, he wanted a war. Then came the Atlanta Falcons game. In front of thousands, in a high-stakes VIP suite, the mask finally slipped. The world watched in horror as King went on Instagram Live, his favorite weapon, and accused his parents of not being there for him, claiming he was raised by the streets and his grandmother while T.I. lived in luxury. That night, a physical fight nearly broke out on camera, and the look in T.I.'s eyes wasn't just anger, it was pure, unadulterated disappointment. But the real fuel was added to the fire during T.I.'s recent feud with the G-Unit mogul, 50 Cent. While T.I. was playing a game of lyrical chess, King Harris decided to bring a sledgehammer to the party. Against his father's direct orders, King began posting disrespectful memes and even wore a shirt featuring 50 Cent's deceased mother. T.I. publicly claimed he was proud of his son for standing up for the family, but sources deep within the Grand Hustle camp say that was a lie. Tip was terrified, an anonymous source revealed. He saw King crossing lines that you don't cross in this industry. He saw his son becoming a target for people way more dangerous than a podcast host. He realized he could no longer control the fire he helped start. For months, the tension has been simmering at a boiling point. King has been leaning harder into a street persona, getting arrested in Pikachu onesies and mocking the law, while T.I. has been desperately trying to protect his brand and his son's life. T.I. famously said on the Ebro in the morning show that he spent so much time trying to get this little N-word off the ledge. Well, tonight, we found out that the ledge finally gave way. This brings us to the studio session on May 10th. It was supposed to be a unity session, a chance to bridge the gap and record a track that would silence the critics. But you can't put 2 alphas in a soundproof room when one is looking for respect and the other is looking for a viral moment. The studio wasn't a place for music that night, it was a cage. And the King was about to show his prince exactly what happens when you push a legend too far. The stage was set. The cameras were off. Or so T.I. thought. But as the beat started to loop, King Harris reached for his phone, and with one accidental swipe, he signed a death warrant for their relationship. You aren't just watching a fight, you are watching the extinction of a dynasty. The clock inside the Grand Hustle private facility struck 1:42 a.m. The air was thick, not with the smell of success, but with the suffocating scent of a brewing disaster. The studio, A place where T.I. had crafted hits that defined an era had become a pressure cooker. On one side of the glass stood the King of the South, his arms crossed, his face a mask of cold, hard granite. On the other side, in the vocal booth, was King Harris, fidgeting with his headphones, his eyes darting around with a nervous, defiant energy. The dispute began over a single verse. King had been recording a track that reportedly didn't just lean into street culture. It directly insulted the very foundation T.I. had built. Sources say King's lyrics were a direct shot at his father's old-school rules, calling them outdated and weak. T.I. hit the talkback button, his voice low and vibrating with a frequency that signaled danger. "Change the bar, King. You're disrespecting the ones who paved the way for you to even stand in this booth." But King, fueled by a dangerous mix of ego and an obsession with being the new face of Atlanta, didn't back down. He stepped out of the booth, his chest puffed out. "I'm the one the streets are talking about now, Pop. Your era is a museum. I'm the reality." That was the moment the fuse reached the dynamite. King reached into his pocket and pulled out his iPhone. He wanted a snippet to show his followers that he was standing up to the legend. He wanted to document his bravery. But as he fumbled with the screen, his adrenaline-soaked fingers missed the mark. He didn't hit record. He hit go live. Within seconds, the notification "King Harris is live" flashed on screens across the globe. Thousands of people flooded the stream, expecting a vibe, but instead, they were met with a nightmare. The camera was shaky, capturing King's face, sweating, eyes wide, as he backed away from the shadows. "Do something then. Touch me. Show the world who you really are," King screamed, his voice cracking with a terrifying mix of bravado and fear. Suddenly, T.I. stepped into the frame. His face wasn't the one we see in interviews. It was distorted, his eyes pitch black, looking like a man who had finally been pushed past the point of no return. "I spent my whole life keeping you off the ledge," T.I. growled, his voice a demonic rasp. "And you think you can spit on my name for a few likes?" The physical confrontation was instantaneous. T.I. lunged. The camera caught a blur of a designer hoodie and a fist. A sickening, heavy thud echoed through the studio speakers and into the headphones of every horrified fan watching live. The phone flew out of King's hand, spinning through the air like a crashing plane, before landing face up on the cold studio floor, tucked under the heavy mixing console. The fans, now numbering over 50,000, were paralyzed. From the low angle of the dropped phone, they saw the unthinkable. They saw the bottom half of the struggle, the scuffling of expensive sneakers, the sound of studio chairs being overturned, and the muffled, agonizing cries of a son being physically restrained by his father. T.I.'s voice was no longer speaking. It was a raw, primal roar of betrayal. "You destroyed everything. You destroyed the legacy." But here is where the first shocking twist happens, the one that made the internet's heart stop. As the struggle continued in the background, a third person's legs entered the camera's frame. It was one of T.I.'s most trusted, high-ranking security guards, a man known for his loyalty to the king. He didn't rush in to pull T.I. off his son. He didn't call for help. Instead, the camera captured him calmly walking toward the studio door. He reached out, and the fans heard the distinct, metallic click of the heavy studio lock turning. He locked them in. The guard then turned toward the console, noticing the phone sitting on the floor, still glowing with the live interface. He didn't end the stream immediately. He leaned down, his face filling the screen for a split second, and whispered to someone off camera, "Tell the team to cut the power. We can't let the police see what happens next." Wait, what happens next? Was this a pre-planned correction? Why were they worried about the police before the fight even started? Just as the guard's boot came down to crush the phone, a voice, weak and trembling, was heard coming from the corner where King was pinned. It wasn't King's voice. It was a woman's voice. A voice that sounded exactly like King's girlfriend pleading, "Tip, please don't do this." He didn't mean to leak the other video. What other video? Before the phone was shattered into 1,000 pieces, the screen flickered, leaving 50,000 witnesses in total darkness and absolute shock. The live ended, but the nightmare had just begun. The internet is now asking, was the fight even about the music? The live had been dead for exactly 42 minutes, but the internet was screaming louder than ever. Within an hour, the screen recordings of that brutal studio struggle had been shared over 4 million times. From TikTok to X, the hashtag the King's Fall was trending with a speed that felt like a digital wildfire. But while fans were arguing about the ethics of the fight, the real escalation was happening behind the scenes, where the industry's heavyweights were starting to pick sides in a war that no one saw coming. By 3 a.m., the reactions weren't just coming from fans, they were coming from the throne. 50 Cent, T.I.'s long-standing rival, didn't just post a meme. He went on a full-blown rant. "I told y'all that house was built on sand," 50 Cent wrote in a now-deleted post. "You can't be the king of the South when you can't even rule your own recording booth. Tip, you didn't just hit your son, you hit your legacy. Game over." Even the heavy hitters like Drake and Meek Mill reportedly unfollowed T.I.'s private account within minutes of the leak. Rumors began to swirl that a secret industry group chat containing Atlanta's biggest names was debating whether T.I. should be banned from the upcoming BET Awards. The king was becoming a pariah in the very city he helped build. The leaked Twitter thread, but then a verified insider account, allegedly belonging to a former Grand Hustle engineer, dropped a 20-tweet thread that sent the world into a state of total panic. He claimed that the fight wasn't just about music or respect. He alleged that King Harris had stumbled upon a folder of unreleased agreements that showed T.I. had been secretly selling off King's music rights to offshore investors behind his back. "King didn't hit go live by accident," the engineer tweeted. "He knew he was in danger. He knew the only way to stay alive in that room was to make sure 50,000 people were watching." That accidental click was a cry for help. The third figure, as the world was processing this betrayal, the most terrifying piece of evidence dropped. A grainy, thermal imaging photo from a security camera across the street from the studio was leaked on the dark web. It showed a group of men in black tactical gear exiting the studio through the back entrance just minutes after the power was cut. They weren't carrying gear. They were carrying a large, heavy, black duffel bag. And here is the shocking reveal that will make your blood turn to ice. An anonymous source at the Grady Memorial Hospital just leaked a patient intake form from 5:15 a.m. The patient's name was redacted, but the next of kin contact listed was Tamika "Tiny" Harris. But wait, the internet's heart stopped when they saw the reason for admission. It wasn't physical assault or contusion. The form clearly stated, possible chemical exposure and severe respiratory distress. Chemical exposure? In a recording studio? The narrative shifted instantly. This wasn't just a physical fight. This was something much more sinister. Was the studio session a trap? Was the fight a distraction from something even darker happening in the ventilation system? Just as the Free King movement was preparing to march toward the studio, T.I.'s official account posted its first update in 12 hours. No apology. No explanation. Just a 10-second video of a burning crown in a dark fireplace. The caption read, "The price of the crown is paid in blood. 6 p.m. tonight. The final confession." But then the biggest twist of all hit the headlines. A local news station in Atlanta reported that a camouflage-wrapped Tesla Cybertruck, King's signature vehicle, had just been found abandoned and scorched on the outskirts of the city. And if the person in the hospital is under Tiny's name, who exactly was in that duffel bag? The world is holding its breath because the final confession isn't coming from T.I. It's coming from someone the world thought was already silenced. Or was King Harris holding a secret that T.I. was willing to kill to keep quiet? The digital world didn't just react, it fractured. Within hours of the scorched Cybertruck report, the internet became a virtual war zone. On one side, the old-school loyalists and die-hard Grand Hustle fans were flooding the comments with hashtag Protect the King. Their argument? A father has the right to discipline a son who is destroying his legacy. They claimed King Harris was a clout chaser who weaponized a family dispute for views. If King didn't respect the crown, he had to feel the weight of it, one viral post stated, gaining over 500,000 likes in minutes. But the backlash from the new generation was a tidal wave of fury. The hashtag #CancelTI movement reached a fever pitch, with Gen Z creators across TikTok analyzing every frame of the shaky, live footage. They pointed to the locking of the door as evidence of kidnapping and domestic terrorism. The divide was no longer just about a fight. It was a generational civil war. T.I. didn't just attack King. He attacked every young artist trying to find their own lane, tweeted a popular Gen Z influencer. The King of the South is now the villain of the South. Inside the music industry, the silence of T.I.'s peers was deafening, until the big names started to move. Reports surfaced that a high-level emergency meeting was held by the heads of major streaming platforms. By the next morning, T.I.'s Legends of Trap playlist had been quietly removed from Spotify's front page. But the real shock came from T.I.'s inner circle. Pharrell Williams, a longtime collaborator and friend, reportedly sent a cease and desist to the Grand Hustle camp, demanding his vocals be stripped from T.I.'s upcoming retirement album. "I can't be part of a project fueled by family blood," a source close to Pharrell allegedly leaked to Rolling Stone. Even Atlanta's own legends were distancing themselves. Rumor has it that Future and 21 Savage canceled their studio sessions with T.I. within hours of seeing the ambulance footage. The king was standing alone in his own castle, and the walls were closing in. The fake expert analysis to make matters more volatile, self-proclaimed body language experts began dissecting the 10-second burning crown video. They claimed T.I.'s reflection in the fireplace glass showed a man who wasn't just tired, but completely unhinged. "This is the behavior of a man who has lost his grip on reality," one expert claimed during a late-night podcast. "The way he stares at the flame, that's not a confession coming. That's a declaration of war against his own blood." As the debates raged, a fake leaked audio of a family group chat began circulating on Discord. In the audio, a voice sounding like Tiny Harris is heard screaming, "You went too far, Cliff. You can't fix this with an album." They're asking about the duffel bag. The internet exploded. What duffel bag? Was it the one seen in the tactical gear footage? Supporters started arguing that the audio was AI-generated, while haters claimed it was the smoking gun. The division was so deep that a physical protest even started outside the Grand Hustle Studios in Atlanta, with fans clashing with T.I.'s security detail. The final spark just as the chaos reached its peak. A cryptic tweet from Charleston White sent a fresh wave of panic through the community. "Y'all think the fight was the headline? Wait until you find out who was actually driving that Cybertruck before it went up in flames." It wasn't King. It was a witness. The industry is paralyzed. The fans are divided. And as the 6 p.m. confession deadline approaches, one thing is certain. Whether T.I. apologizes or doubles down, the Harris name will never mean the same thing again. The public has issued its verdict, but the real sentencing is about to happen on a global stage. The clock finally hit 6 p.m. Millions of people were glued to T.I.'s Instagram page, refreshing every millisecond, waiting for the final confession. The world expected a tearful apology, a long-winded explanation, or maybe a full retirement announcement. But when the screen finally lit up, it wasn't T.I.'s face that appeared. It wasn't even the studio. The video was a live feed from a high-security, underground parking garage. The camera was stable this time, professional, cold, and cinematic. In the center of the frame sat King Harris. But he wasn't bruised. He wasn't in a hospital gown. He was dressed in a sharp, black suit, sitting behind a desk, looking more like a CEO than a rebel. He looked directly into the lens with a smile that can only be described as chilling. "The ultimate betrayal. Y'all thought I accidentally hit go live?" King asked, his voice calm and mocking. "I've been playing the game since I was a kid. You think the King of the South is the only one who knows how to move in silence?" Then came the final shocking revelation that changed every single thing we thought we knew. King reached into his jacket and pulled out a digital tablet. He flicked the screen toward the camera, showing a legal document signed and notarized just 48 hours ago. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a transfer of ownership. Grand Hustle? The royalties? The masters? The name T.I.? "It doesn't belong to my father anymore," King whispered. "He didn't attack me because he was disappointed. He attacked me because he realized I had outsmarted him. I own the throne now." Literally. The duffel bag, truth, but wait. What about the ambulance? What about the duffel bag and the scorched Cybertruck? King leaned forward, his eyes turning cold. The person in that ambulance? That was the lawyer who tried to hide the paperwork. And that duffel bag? Let's just say it contained the only physical copies of the confession my father was planning to make. Suddenly, the camera panned to the left, and the internet's heart stopped. There in the shadows sat T.I. He wasn't the king. He was handcuffed to a metal pipe, his head hanging low, looking like a defeated man. He wasn't the aggressor. He was the prisoner. King Harris hadn't been crashing out. He had been orchestrating the greatest corporate takeover in hip-hop history. The Pikachu arrests, the Waffle House drama, the 50-cent beef. It was all a massive, multi-year smokescreen to make T.I. believe his son was a failure, while King was secretly buying up his father's debt and music rights through front companies. The king didn't lose his cool. King Harris sneered as he stood up to walk away. The king lost his empire. And the best part? Y'all watched me do it live. Just as King was about to cut the feed, a loud, metallic banging echoed through the garage. Heavy boots. Flashlights. The sound of a SWAT team breaching the doors. King didn't look scared. He looked at the camera one last time and said, "Wait until they find out what's actually under the floor of the studio. Part 2 is going to be a movie." The screen went black. A single white line of text appeared. The new reign begins. May 15th. Is King Harris the greatest villain in rap history? Is T.I. truly a prisoner of his own son? And what is buried under the Grand Hustle studio floor that King is so confident about? The world is in total shock. This isn't gossip anymore. This is a dynasty in ashes, and the prince just lit the final match. Was this the greatest betrayal in the history of hip-hop, or is King Harris actually a genius playing a 4D game of chess? The throne has been seized, the king is in chains, and the Grand Hustle legacy is burning to the ground right before our eyes. But the biggest question remains, what is buried under that studio floor? Drop your theories in the comments. Is King a hero or a cold-blooded villain? Smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications right now, because part 2 drops soon, and you won't believe the evidence we've uncovered. Don't get left behind.